You talked about that everything you do revolves around consumer, content, customers/clients, and then competition. Could you sort of go through those 4 C's and talk about them in relation to where things stand today with Peacock TV and NBCU?
Yeah.
You talked about that everything you do revolves around consumer, content, customers/clients, and then competition. Could you sort of go through those 4 C's and talk about them in relation to where things stand today with Peacock TV and NBCU?
Yeah, we've always been a consumer-first company, so, not necessarily that we're just following the consumer, but, we keep up with the trends. We're understanding what's going on, where are people going, what are they looking for, what do they need, and making sure that our business is there where they are. Because on the viewer side, we need to be where they are, but for the advertisers, they also want to be where, the users are. So how do we make sure that that's together? And, we know it's so far paying out, an incredible investment. Even right now, we've seen that at this point, probably about a third of our viewing is happening in streaming, and in the next 18 months or so, we really see probably around a half and half split of linear versus digital. So we knew that's where we needed to be, that's what we needed to be doing. When it came to, sort of thinking about it more holistically, we know that viewers are kind of everywhere. They're on linear, they're on their phones, they're on social, now, in the gaming space, they're kind of in all these places. So we're saying, all right, how do we show up in those areas and make sure that they're able to sort of access the kind of stuff that they're interested in, the kind of stuff that they're engaged by in those spaces, and making sure that we're, a part of that. And all of us know, as marketers, sure, we're trying to get to consumers, and then as consumers of the work that we do ourselves, we all sort of viscerally feel it. But when it comes to sort of Peacock and how we, think about it from that perspective, the consumer is the anchor in just understanding who they are. How do they function? What are they interested in? What do they need? What do they want? What do they not want? And when you think about them on the platform itself, it's how can we, use advertising and engagement with advertisers to either complement behaviors that they're already doing on platform. So you're like, oh, users are doing this, this, and this. So how about we, try to create something that works with that, something that can potentially incentivize certain behaviors. So say something like our binge ad. We know we want users binging. So how do we, incentivize that, create an ad unit that sort of gives them some value and makes them want to keep doing that. Specifically, just sort of digging into a little bit of the details, binge ad. Third episode, if you're watching, straight through, you've gone through your first 2 episodes. By the time you get to your third one, we say, hey, this one is going to be ad-free, thanks to, whoever the advertiser is. Or, how do we use advertising to potentially deter behaviors? Are there things that people are doing on the platform that we don't quite care for? Well, first, let's take a beat and understand why is it happening. Everybody who works with me knows I'm always the one that asks why a million times. Let's get to the crux of it. Why is this happening? But then, is there a way for us to leverage advertising in order to maybe deter that behavior, to get them to do something that maybe we think could be more advantageous for them, and or frankly, again, can help us sort of make the platform better, but then give them a different and better experience. So that's that first C, that consumer really anchoring on their behaviors and what's going on there. The second one is content, which, is important. Why are users there? They're there for their content.
Right.
And so with the content, because we have such a wide variety of it on platform, you have your live events, you have your, library, fan favorite comfort shows. You have those brand new series like Bel-Air. I'm sure we got some Bel-Air fans in the room. You have your sports, and both live and replays of things like that. With that one, it's really more about again, sort of back to the consumer, understanding what is the viewer state when they're watching certain things. And you just think about it, a viewer, a fan of a show is sort of in a different mind state if they're watching the brand new Minions movie. That's a particular mind state. You're coming to the platform in a particular way, your viewing experience is probably going to be a particular thing. That's very different than if you're coming and watching a Premier League final. It's an entirely different experience, which is different if you're I don't know, binging Murder, She Wrote, like at 2 in the morning, because that's just, something that you love. Like that's also a different, viewing state. So being mindful of the kinds of content and the kinds of experiences that people will curate for themselves around that content is important. So when we think about, innovations on platform for advertisers and marketers, we're thinking about, okay, how do we bring them into that particular experience? Kind of expecting, what the user is interested in at that moment and how we can make that experience the best that it could be. You may not want to get as interrupted as much if you're watching, Marry Me, when it just came out yesterday. Like, who wants those pods kind of happening in the middle of that kind of film? So that's where we come in with like our what we call our cinematic sort of trailer model, and giving you sort of that 3 minutes of ads up front, but say after that, this movie won't be interrupted. Or say for something like sports, where we're experimenting with now of thinking about if those of you saw our new front presentation, talking about something like a frame ad, where you're watching your sport or even a live event, you don't want to get taken away from that. Like that's why you're here. You're trying to stay in that. So can we essentially frame that? Bring in an advertiser's message right next to it. You're not taking away from what you're looking at. And then how do we make sure that that's complementary? It's not just someone trying to talk to you or talk at you like we've all been used to for so many decades at this point. But how can we, make that a complementary experience and again, enhance that, make it something that you weren't originally potentially getting on the linear side. So that's that content, just being mindful of those, what different content brings to a different viewing state.